Hi and welcome back. My name is Gonzalo Artiach, Healthcare Equity Analyst here at ABG. Our next company is Fluoguide, a Danish biotech company developing cancer-targeting dyes for guided surgery. And with us, we have here today Morten Albertsen, the CEO. Please, Morten, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. So I welcome you to the presentation of Fluoguide and our effort toward precision surgery therapy for cancer. So may I have the next slide, please? We are a publicly listed company, so I kindly ask you to make your own judgment. And if I have the next one, this is really what we do. We light up cancer, and if you could start the video. Then what you can see here is a cancer that's lighting up in the middle, and then you have the brain around it, which is a dark tissue, and then you have the surgeon that is moving around with this equipment and try to dissect and free this cancer so they can remove it in one go and get it out of the brain. And what we do in Fluoguide is really that we light up cancer, and you can see it in the middle where the cancer lights up. So this is in a nutshell what the Fluoguide is doing. And if I may have the next slide. So surgery is a primary treatment option for most cancer, and about 80% of patients will have a surgery conducted once in their disease course. And it's when you do the surgery, you would like to have a complete removal of the cancer, because the more cancer you remove, the better the prognosis is for the patient. Unfortunately, what often happens is that the cancer regrow locally, and about half of cases in average, or half of the patient with cancer, the cancer will regrow locally due to not a complete removal of the cancer. And it's not because the surgeon is poor in any way, it's simply because the surgeon only have their eyes and the finger, and so they have to see and feel, and it can be very difficult for them to really distinguish what is a cancer and what's a normal tissue, and particularly where is the border between the two. So obviously a lot of different technologies are wobbling to figure a way to help the surgeons and completely remove the cancer. And we believe that the fluorescent guided surgery will be the next frontier, in the sense that that will really help the surgeon to bring cancer surgery to the next level. And we also believe that Fluoguide is on the very leading front in fluorescence-guided surgery, and I will explain why this is the case. So if I may have the next slide, please. So this is on the top of the images is again some images for just completed clinical trial. And you see on the left side, you see what appeared to a normal cancer. On the right side, you see the same patient with the light that has been switched on, and where you can see they have our product FD1, and the cancer lights up. So this is a cancer that is hidden below some of the normal tissue, and you can see through the normal tissue. So the product we have is a freeze-dried powder that is reconstituted prior to use. Then it will circulate in the body after an intravenous injection prior to surgery. It will bound to all cell that expresses a UPAR, and then at time 0, the entire patient will light up. But then what is not bound to UPAR will be removed from the body, and then you will have only left, what is left is the flow force that is linked to the cancer cell, and that enable guidance of the surgery guidance of the surgeon through surgery. So this is really how it works. So it's a very simple procedure, yet with a quite profound impact. And if I may have the next slide. So UPAR is a molecule we are targeting, and UPAR is a receptor-bound enzyme system that is a proteolytic in its nature. So it means that it's break down the normal tissue, and the way the cancer uses it is that when it has to spread into normal tissue, it will break down normal tissue using UPAR, and then it allow it to invade the normal tissue. So UPAR will be particularly expressed on malignant cancer. It particularly expressed on the forefront of the cancer, and also UPAR is expressed on all different kind of cancer that is growing and spreading. And that means more than 80% of patients presenting themselves with cancer will have UPAR extensively expressed. If I may have the next one. Thank you. So FD1 is the first product we are working with. It has 4 very distinct, interesting features. One of them, the first one, is that it's a peptide that's bound to IC green, which is a commonly known fluorophore. So the first one is due to the peptide that binds to UPAR, and that means that the fluorophore will be expressed exactly where the UPAR is on the cells, and that means very specifically to cancer. And on the same time, it will be used across many different kind of cancers in the entire body. So a very high specificity to cancer and broadly applicable. That's the first important point with FD1. The second one is that the fluorophore is icy green, and icy green is interesting for two reasons. The first one is that equipment that is out there is built and designed so it both can detect icy green and also can get it to light up. And that requires some special light and it requires some special sensors. And having a product like FD1 that is exactly similar to icy green in the light spectrum means that we do not have to change the equipment. We can use exactly the same equipment that is out there that can detect icy green. And that way we will not have to ask the hospitals to buy new equipment or the equipment manufacturers to change the equipment. We can simply make a plug and play for the technical features of the equipment. Another aspect of icy green is that it uses near-infrared light, and that means compared to visible light, is up where you cannot see it, but it's not being absorbed by normal tissue, and that means that you can see it very deep into the tissue. So you, for instance, have two images here on the slide. The one on the left side is a first-generation fluorophore that is based on visible light, and on that image there's a cancer underneath you cannot see because it's hidden by the normal tissue. Normal light, you will only be able to see 1 to 2 millimeters into the tissue compared to near-infrared light, where you can see it 1 to 2 centimeters into the tissue. And of course, that could make a huge difference for detecting the cancer, or finding the cancer or not. The last thing that is interesting with icy green is that it's a product that's been around since 1959. It was first approved in the US, and it's known to be very well tolerated. So the risk of us getting some nasty surprises in the late clinical development is very low. Further, we have had a very robust preclinical program, multiple dose study done, and we are not limited by toxicity, by feasibility, and that means that it confirms the very good tolerability of icy green. So really, we have a very interesting product here in FD1. So no wonder that we also have very interesting clinical trials, which I will show on the next slide. So this one is some of the results from our first clinical trial. We have selected very aggressive brain cancer, high-grade glioma. It's an indication that there's about 30,000 patients in US and Europe, new patient every year. It's a very serious disease. About half of the patient is died within 14 months, and only 5% of the patient is alive after 5 years. It's a cancer that is located in the brain, and that means that its precision matters. I mean, if you take out too much of the cancer, you risk to disable the patient, and if you take out too little, of course, you have the problem with the regrowth. And on the images on the right side, really showing a cavity on the top where you see it like a surgeon would see after they have removed the cancer. That is what they see, and they have to make the decision: should I remove more tissue here because I believe it's cancer, or if I move more tissue here, I risk actually to disable the patient. And that could be that they cannot move or speak or see, or even you can sort of really killing them. I mean, if you take out some vital structure of the brain. So this position is really matter. And on the second image, you see that we check this cavity with FD1, and there you can see that we actually had some light, and this was removed, and you could see it was cancer, and you can then see on the image below that we have a clean cavity, and that's how we can make a huge difference for the neurosurgeons and the patients. Next slide, please. So this is a more detailed slide on the data we got from the trial. It was the first trial we just completed here in spring. It was a 1/2A study, so the safety was the highest primary endpoint. And as I mentioned before, we have an icy green that is well tolerated. We have a very strong and clean preclinical package on the safety. And then it was confirmed here in the clinical trial. So we had 4 mild adverse event, grade 1 and 2, that was reported in 3 patients out of the 40 patients in total. The second objective was to find the optimal dose, and we did that. We started out on 1 milligram, and then we increased the dose. And at about 8 milligrams, we start seeing consistently that we had, we could use it for guidance. And then on 36 milligram was the optimal dose. And then fortunately, we saw actually on 48 milligram, we were limited not by toxicity, but limited by that the image quality was becoming suboptimal. And what we saw actually were that the cancer still lights up in the same way as 36 and 48, but that the background come up and blurred the image, and really see that the background come up and disturbing the image. So 36 milligrams is a selected dose for high-grade glioma. And then we had tissue samples, so the neurosurgeon sampled both tissue that lights up but did not light up, and then it was validated afterwards with a neurosurgeon, and we could see that we have a specificity of 100%, meaning that everything that lights up in the brain actually were cancer, and that is a quite good starting point. So if I may have the next slide, please. This is then the design of the 2B. Because of really a very nice result we got here in springtime, there's no reason for not advancing it. And what we have decided to do is going ahead with the 2B trial. That is designed basically the same way as we anticipated the phase 3 trial would be designed. It would be inclusion will be the patient that is suspected to have high-grade glioma. They will be randomized into two groups, 12 patients in each group. One group would be FD1 at 36 milligram, and the other one would be 5-ALA Gliolan. And Gliolan is this approved product I mentioned before that is in a first generation product approved for guidance of surgery, is approved for high-grade glioma. It's a product that is converted into to the Fluoguide, and it's not completely precise in the sense that there's some of the tissue that is not cancer that lights up, and you need the surgeon to have some kind of training before they're actually allowed to use it. Nevertheless, it's the best they have, and it's actually helped them so far. It's also make make the surgeons trained for using surgical guidance. So in that way, the market is more prepared. But we will compare to this product that is a standard of care in Europe. White light is more in the US. But so they're randomized to one of the two treatment. The surgery will be done under white light. The surgeons still do not know if the patient have had FD1 or 5-ALA. Then that will be checked with either with near-infrared light or the blue light. And then you can see if there's anything left in the cavity that you then can remove. And if it's then validated by a pathologist that is in fact is cancer, then you say the patient had a benefit of the product, and that will count as a positive patient. So the primary endpoint will be the proportion of patients with a relevant change in surgical strategy, meaning that cancer is detected by the dye, and that is actually confirmed to be cancer by a pathologist. This study is ongoing as we speak. If I have the next slide, please. We have also started up a lung trial that is ongoing, and lung was selected because lung is the most frequent form of cancer in the world. Lung is today discovered relatively late, so it means that it's relatively much spread in the body, typically of patients that have lung cancer. The point is that a lot of different programs is ongoing screening programs that makes the cancer being detected earlier in the disease, and that will completely increase or change the treatment of lung cancer in the sense that surgery will become much more relevant for it than it is before. And still surgery is very important for lung cancers. But what I want to say is that the argument I just made is why all the big medtech companies are looking very seriously into lung cancer. So it's really all of them with robotic surgery, with all different kind of equipments that are working on defining the lung cancer surgery with their equipment, using the features they have on their equipment. So lung cancer is a very partnering or equipment intensive indication. So both because it's number one in incidence, but also because it's a very get a lot of attention from partners, we selected that as an indication number 2. The trial is a very explorative trial. We will be a 2A study. We will look at 8 patients first on one dose, and then we have an opportunity to increase or decrease the dose, and then we will have 8 patients more, and then we could have a further 8 patients. 24 patients in total will be included in this trial, and as said, that is ongoing as we speak. We'll have the first result here in Q4, we expect. So if I may have the next slide. The other trial we just launched now, this has had all the green lights from regulatory agencies. We're not recruiting patients yet. That is expected here in October, but that's in head and neck. And head and neck is an interesting combination between lung and brain. Precision really matters in head and neck as well, because there's a lot of very critical structures in the neck. So when you do remove the cancer, you cannot just take it away. You really have to be very precise. There's a cosmetic element into it. And then last, the equipment manufacturers is similar to the situation for lung, paying a lot of attention for head and neck cancer. So that is also an indication where we get a lot of exposure toward equipment manufacturers. We just published a study where we show that 93 patients have demonstrated extensively expression of UPAR in the head and neck cancer, and also to compare some of the other specific targets and really show that UPAR is a quite interesting target, because not only show where the cancer is, but also actually predict how the patient actually will perform afterwards. But as said, it's an explorative study. So if I may have the next slide, please. This is a trial then in the fourth one we are starting up. That is being submitted later this year. It's a trial due to the high-grade gliomas trial we just completed. There was 40 patients in total, and 4 of the patients have other indications than high-grade glioma due to the situation that it was suspected to have high-grade glioma. And one of the patients had a mini glioma in the trial. A mini glioma is a form of cancer that normally is non-malignant, but still about a third of the cases will actually recur later on in the patient. And another issue for the patient is that they have they get disability or side effect from the surgery procedure. And because they live such a long time, it actually accumulated is a huge issue for the patient. So precision is really matter. So for the mini glioma trial, both because we saw actually one of the patients where we really made a benefit for, but also because it's a high unmet medical need, we will launch this study. It again will be a very explorative study, figuring out the value of FG1 for those patients. So if I have the next slide, please. This is an example of this patient that was included into the trial. As you see on the row top of it, it was really the brain before it is before the surgery start. The kind of the top of the brain is taken away, and then you look into the cancer in the brain. And the left part of it, the red one, is white light. Then you have the 5-ALA, the blue light in the middle, and then you have FG1 on the right side. And what you actually interesting see, and then on the next row you see the different cancers after the same cancer, but a different light after they're taken out from the patient. And you can see that the FG1 really lights up. And interestingly here, it was only 8 milligrams, and as you may recall from before, 8 milligrams were the first dose where we start seeing that it could be used across the different patient. We ended up with using 36 milligrams as the optimal dose, so it's a much more light that we obtain actually in those patients that we have the optimal dose. But what you see here, interestingly, is what I told before about the 5-ALA, is the part of it that lights up is actually not cancer, and the part that do not light up is actually cancer. And the reason for that is because you cannot see deeper into the tissue. So, and the specificity that is related to the 5-ALA. So this is just one patient, but still it's a very interesting patient. If I may have the next slide. We had a very interesting finding with this patient, namely that again, the cavity was checked with FG1. The neurosurgeon saw there was light, and she removed it, and actually it was confirmed to be cancer. So this patient actually had a benefit for using FG1. So if I may have the next slide, please. So this is an overview of the trials we're running. So we have the 2B in high-grade glioma. We have a result in first half next year. We have the lung first half next year, and as well the head and neck first half of next year. And then we have the mini glioma and low-grade glioma will be second half of next year. So if I may have the next slide, please. So one thing that is a feature of FG1 is the photothermal therapy. And basically is that when you light up on the molecule, it will heat up. And as it's at the same time very specifically bound to cancer cell, it will heat up beyond the temperature that you need to kill the cells. And that means that you actually kill the cells very specifically. So if you imagine a structure in the brain where neurosurgeon leave cancer behind because it's invaded into this sensitive structure that they decide not to remove for the patient, then you can actually sweep it and clean up with photothermal therapy. In a sense, you can actually kill the cancer cells without killing the sensible structure. And this is a really a very neat feature that, of course, will be explored further. It will be more drug-like endpoint, so the study will be longer, and the endpoint will be more survival and recurrence. But it's the price will also be completely different. If I may have the next slide, please. So we are not the only one believing that fluorescent guided surgery is really taking up and will reshape the whole surgical area for oncology. I mean, Stryker, there have been 4 acquisitions. Stryker acquired and Novadex, Medtronic, Visusense, Olympus acquired, Quest, and then also getting acquired for optics. It's all based on near-infrared light, and the first near-infrared second generation dye was approved in 91, and that was Silux for ovarian cancer. 5-ALA Glyvalan was approved in 7, but we really believe that a lot of things is going to happen. And what they need the next those companies is a dye that can guide them, and that is a company like Fluoguide. So we have the next slide, please. So this is just an overview of the competitions, and you see them out on the left side. I think I will. The key point really is here that they are spread all over. And if I may have the next slide, there's one thing that is really important. If I can have the next slide, please. Yes, this one. There's one thing that is important, that is being specific to cancer, being able to use it across different cancer indication, and then have the equipment independency I just mentioned earlier on due to the IC Green labeling. That's all 3 features that is important, and that those we have in FD1. So if I may have the next slide, please. Thank you. This is an overview of the different kind of equipment. There's microscope, endoscope, and robotic surgery. And by the indication we have selected, we will be exposed to all the big medtech companies. And that, of course, is very interesting for us, forming a partnership down the road. For indication like aggressive brain cancer, we can take it to the market ourselves. But for lung or breast or colorectal cancer, well, the big indication, it will be more partnering scenario we're looking at. But this gives us really a good flexibility. So we have good interest for those partners. If I may have the next slide, please. So this is really the key upcoming milestones. We have this, as I mentioned, we have 3 very important clinical trial result in first half next year, and then we have one in second half next year. So we have a very dense clinical milestones. We've been incorporated in 18 and floated in 19, have the first clinical result in 20, and we're really moving quite quickly because our trials are short, because the patient only included into the trials in 48 hours. And I think that's all I have, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Morten, for such a nice presentation. And now we have time for a few questions. And I will start with a question regarding the design of the new study. Your previous study, the phase 2A, every patient that was enrolled received both 5-ALA and FG1. And then you could compare within each patient both treatments. But now in the phase 2B, you are separating in 2 arms. One will receive FG1 and the other one will receive 5-ALA. Could you expand a bit on the rationale behind this new design?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two reasons for it. The one is that we, when we started the trial, we dose them simultaneously. So we have FG1 was given intravenously and 5-ALA was given orally. And a known side effect from 5-ALA is that you get a lot of nausea and even vomiting. This was then you could not separate between the 2. When we moved to the evening dose of FD1, so we give it intravenously in the evening and gave 5-ALA in the morning, then we could see that the patient had no nausea, no vomiting before they actually got the 5-ALA in the morning. So to be able to prove that clearly in a trial for regulatory purpose, we would like to separate the 2. The other reason for it is that the trial we're running now is a more, say, market-conformed trials to run, so it will be more in compliance with what the agency will see. Still, the trial we did with putting them into the same patient gave us a lot of advantages in the way that we could really clearly compare in the same patient how well the 2 compare to each other. So it was this is the reason for it. So the side effect and the more acceptance way of doing it for the agencies.
Right, thank you very much. Very interesting. And I have a second question. It's on your study in head and neck. The head and neck cancer, it's a quite heterogeneous type of cancer, right? So could you let us know if you will aim all types of head and neck cancer, or you will focus, I don't know, let's say oral cavity or neck or everything?
Yeah, we start out with the squamous cell carcinoma, and we start up in the oral cavity and the oropharyngeal location. So that will allow us both to have superficial located cancers in the tongue, for instance, or in the stomach, but also we will have cancers that is further down in the pharynx. So we will be able both to use scope, we use open field surgery, and that is a good model for us to define how many of the head and neck cancer types we will be able to target afterwards.
Very interesting. And a follow-up question, it's regarding your FG2 program. Could you let us know how this program is going and what is in the short term or mid-term, how this program looks like?
Yeah, the program FG2 is a new part targeted flu for as well. It's particularly excreted in the liver, no, sorry, in the kidney, and compared to FD1 that is eliminated in the liver. So when you have it from the liver, FD1, then we kind of color the whole gut, and it's difficult to see the stomach-located tumor. FD2 is much more suited for stomach-located tumors. FD2 is one of the more modern fluorophores, so it's more bright than FD1. On the other hand, does not fit into the equipment, so there are some work that needs to be done with the equipment before it fit into it. When this is said, a lot of companies working with this kind of fluorophore with a different targeted, and one of them is on target with the Cytilux that was approved here in last year. So it doesn't really matter if those are coming out doing some of the groundwork and get the equipment base upgraded before we come out with it. And then the last thing is that it gives us a lot of flexibility in the partnering, in the sense that we can sell off an entire molecule rather than selling off for an indication. So that gives the difference between the two, and it's right now in preclinical development.
Great. And one last question. How satisfied are you with your current capital level, and how are you thinking of moving forward?
Well, we're quite happy with our capital level because it will allow us to get some of the clinical milestones, and that is really where. Of course, we will not run 3 phase 3 programs in parallel, but that gives us a very good basis for picking the optimal indication, the optimal positioning, the optimal pricing, the optimal partnering, and then do what can I say, the next step, whatever that would be, based on this informed decision. But I would say that we are in a very strong position because having such a broad range of different clinical trials going on and getting the result in almost the same time is really, really neat and nice.
Morten, thank you very much for your nice presentation and for being here with us today.
Thank you very much.